Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Stranger Things Season 4 Cinematography and Filmmaking Breakdown. Before we get started, I just want to shout out to a guy who commented on my last video, Rick Post, I believe it is, letting me know that the main cinematographer on Season 4, which is what we're looking at, was a guy called Caleb Hayman. In my last video, I talked about 3 other cinematographers, the main one of which was Tim Ives, who established the Stranger Things look and style of the show. But yeah, so thanks to Rick for that. Without further ado, let's get into the breakdown of episode 2. So the first thing I want to point out is the blocking of the actors. Notice how our 2 main characters who we're focusing on right now are sort of very symmetrical in center of frame. And then outside of that, we have another 2 characters, and in between their headspace, sort of in the middle of the frame at the background, we have another one of our characters. So all our characters are able to be seen in these sort of medium shots. Also, another thing I want to point out is the distance between the camera and subject are always the same. And the camera here, eye line, is sort of in between both our characters here. I'd probably say more on Mike's eye line in terms of height-wise. And then we drop down a little bit and we sort of tilt up a little bit here. Another thing I want to point out is an editing technique. Editors will do a lot of the time is where they cut on action. So Mike here is about to kiss Elle just on the forehead, and as he does, they choose that to cut from this sort of medium shot to a medium wide, and cut on the action. And again, I'll pause it here as well. If we look into the center of that door, you can see the reflections of this woman here and Elle, and right in that gap, that's where our cameraman should be standing. So I'm taking it that they've used CGI to remove these kind of things. There's actually quite a lot of things within this episode as well where reflections are quite prominent in sunglasses and bits and pieces, and I would have thought they would have had to use some sort of CGI to remove the cameraman. Here's the transition I want to talk about. So we pull back, and then we center frame on our new character, do a slight push in, and now we've changed story to his. I'm going to point out one thing here, which is the sound design of this show is they've leveled up on the sound design 100%. As the guy pushes the buttons for the bear, the sound is obviously not realistic in any way, but it just gives you that impact of the urgency of Murray's character trying to get somewhere. And then another thing here, we're talking about transitions mostly in this episode because there's a lot of transitions and how they just flow. That really helps the edit of this episode flow. We're focused on this car and it moves left to right. Now we cut and we're on another car moving from left to right, and it flows into the next scene. Different characters now. 2 things that make this kind of edit and this bit of filmmaking work really well is, one, the movement is the same. So we have a movement of an object from left to right, and then when we cut, another object is moving from left to right, and then also the object is the same thing. So the first shot is the taxi, and then the next shot is just a public car, so the movement's the same and the object is the same as well. And there's a lot of this that we'll come across in this episode because they do it quite often. But yeah, let's move on to the next shot. Okay, so in this next sequence we're going to look at, it's really about a transition that really stood out to me in this episode. So yeah, I just want to get into this one quickly. Lighting wise, we've probably got a really powerful light right behind those doors, hard light as well, so there's probably no diffusion on that. That's going to be up and pointing down slightly, a bit of haze in there. That's how we're creating those beams. And then on the ceilings, we have probably like an Astera tube or Titan sort of tube, which look like very practical lighting anyway. But there's a bunch of those on the ceiling, all to very similar color temperature to the light outside anyway, daylight balance maybe. Then camera wise, we're starting on the floor on their feet, and then we're tilting the camera up. Notice how we're keeping that same rule of keeping the distance between the camera and our subject the same, whether that be in front of them or behind them when we are sort of tracking with the characters. Okay, then we're gonna keep the distance, then we're gonna cut to the reverse shot. Again, we're keeping the same distance between the characters. What I think has happened here as well is that they've leveled their exposure for inside. And notice again how when I was talking about this problem that we can encounter a lot, especially as indie filmmakers, is the transition of going from inside to outside, and especially when it's a very bright sunny day. If you're exposed to the levels that are currently inside, you have to either change your exposure as soon as you get out, or you have to do sort of some sort of trick where you maybe jump to the outside as a shot. But what I think they do here is they've exposed to the levels of the interior, and then as these characters come through, they push open the door, and that natural daylight is just flooded the lens. that's what I think's happened. There might have been some post work in that as well. But the transition here it comes, there it is. A beautiful shot. It's like this upside down rotating shot, which just flows so well from that last shot. What I think this is either a drone shot, but I think it's more likely a crane, because obviously Tim Ives mentioned he used Techno crane a lot, and this is obviously large enough to be that kind of, or high enough, and to be that kind of a piece of equipment. Time of day, we're shooting this at a very particular time of day. This is either sunset or sunrise. I imagine it's going to be sunrise. The reason we can tell that is because the shadows, you can see that the police officer right here, look how long his shadow is. That means that the sun is going to be very, very low against the horizon to cast those long shadows. The reason you'd want to do that is obviously part of the story, the scripts, shooting schedule wise as well. But more importantly, if this is a crane, for example, the base of this crane is going to be over to the left. Even if it was a drone, these shadows would help hide any kind of distraction, because if this is midday, for example, that drone shadow is going to be right below us. But because we're shooting at this very particular time of day with the long shadows, that drone or crane arm is going to be way over camera left, so we're not going to be able to see that in shot, which obviously you don't want to. And then it comes down, and it's very controlled, which is why I think this is probably a crane shot. Then we cut to this next clip, and the only thing I want to point out here again is depth. As cinematographers, we're trying to create depth in all our shots. Foreground element here, we have the body they've just found and put into the back of this ambulance. We have our two characters here. I think we shift focus, to the new police chief. Cut to this shot, which is nice. And then here we go, closing the doors. That's just a great way to end that little clip. So yeah, I just really love that shot. All right, moving on to the next one. Okay, so for this next sequence, I want to point out the fact that lighting continuity does not matter. The lighting can change so drastically, and audiences won't even notice. The thing with Stranger Things is whenever they start a shot, they're always starting on something. They're always focusing on something and then moving into the scene. And here we go, this very first frame that we have, center framing. Again, that's part of Tim Ives' sort of palette for Stranger Things. So we're center framing on the arcade. Instantly we know where we are. Max ride past, and then as soon as Dustin comes into frame, we follow him, focus on him, follow it. Okay, so I'm gonna pause it here. I wanna show you that the only light source here is the sun. Okay, so this is probably, again, this is either sunrise or sunset. We're getting into dusk and stuff. But here's the part where lighting continuity does not matter, okay? Watch this, the sun is on the left of this building. So we jump to this next clip, and it's full on middle of the day. The sun has suddenly just, changed position drastically.
I'm not even answering that question.
And guaranteed, most audiences, 99% of people won't even notice that the lighting's completely changed. Again, the reason why this works is because the lighting looks best here. This is going to be the best time to shoot this scene of them coming in, because everything is backlit. And then the reason why we know everything's backlit is because this house in the background, the shadows are pointing towards the camera. Therefore, the sun or the light source has to be opposite the camera to give us the shadows pointing towards the camera. Anyway, we cut to this clip, everything's backlit, and we follow our characters in, pan left, and into the store. Now we jump behind the counter. Again, we're shooting, trying to have elements in front of, for the foreground, the midground, and the background. So as the dolly comes round, we land on this locked shot with left and right foreground elements of the computer and some boxes and bits and pieces. Center framing with Dustin, our character. Our other character is looking at Dustin, so our eye is extra drawn to the center of frame. And then we have background elements, practical lights and bits and pieces, that natural sunlight coming in as well. As the other characters come in, we cut to this next shot, which is a push in. We have the contrast, color contrast of the red coming from that sign and the outdoor very cold blue coming from the left to give us that color contrast on the computer. And again, the movement of that is a push in and ever so slight tilt up. What the filmmakers, they're telling you is that this is important. This part is important information. Okay, and finally, I just want to pause it on here. Just another thing to always be thinking about is trying to create that depth in our image. This frame on max, it's just a slow push in to her face from a sort of a medium to a close-up-ish. But no, again, color contrast here. We have the red from camera right and the bluish kind of color from camera left, and then this natural daylight on the right of her face. But the other thing I wanted to point out was the depth part of the image. That door behind her, that whatever it is into the back of the store or whatever, it's just little bits like this where you open a door and chuck a light in there that again would be representing daylight from a window perhaps. But if that door was closed, then that whole door, that whole area of that door in the frame would be black. You see how the top of that corner of the door is very dark, that whole part of it would be dark. And that little pop of light with the door open, it just gives you that extra depth, that extra, you know, dimensionality to the image and stuff, you know. And yeah, I just noticed those type of things. There's always those little extra bits you do to an image that make it that little bit, at 2% improved. Okay, moving on. So this next sequence is one of the coolest transitions within episode 2, if not all of season 4. It's the burn transition towards the end of the episode. So here we have the shot of the guy, and we rack focus to the flame, he's burning it, and then I'll pause it here. Yep, just here. I just want to show off the bit of cinematography here, again, the depth. So we have 2 characters, foreground elements, they're silhouetted, so they have no light behind them. All the light is in front of those guys, hence they're silhouetted. We have our guy in the yellow t-shirt here, who's in our sort of mid-ground. There's gonna be some sort of soft light above him, and it kind of falls off as well. So it's gonna probably be just over him, just to get some illumination on him. You have the practical to the left there. We're seeing the bulb. Then we have here, which is really the point of interest. This light here, there's going to be a very powerful light source, hard light coming straight through that window. Notice how it's angled as well. So it's over to the camera right, pointing to camera left. We've angled it in a way where it's not pointing towards the camera. It's very much angled. And then we've got haze in there because obviously we wouldn't see these light beams without the haze. That light source as well looks like it's got a blue sort of tinge to it as well. And then blocking wise, we have our actor holding up the subject of focus, which is this burning bit of paper. He's holding that in this God beam, this light beam. So yeah, it just draws your eye straight to it. But all the layers of this really help. I mean, as I said, the cinematography is fantastic in this season. We cut to Lucas, I believe, another shot. Here we go. And then we cut to the transition. So we have a close-up of the burning piece of paper against what looks like a completely black background, so that beam is no longer there. And this is probably a shot that's done somewhere else as well, probably not the same actor holding it. Then we go to this extreme close-up, and here's where it comes, that burn away transition, so that paper burns away. And then what happens here is again, in this next scene, the camera is fixed on the sign within the video store, and then it's almost like it looks like a slight digital zoom out of it, and then we pan around to the right. So let's watch that one more time. So again, we've got the extreme close-up, the paper burns. As it burns away, that's clearly green screened or something, and then we pull away from the sign. And again, that transition works so well because the flames burn from left to right, and then the camera movement in the next scene is pulling out of the sign and moving from left to right as well. Again, the movement really flows as well, and it's just such a cool transition. Okay, on to the last one then. So we start the scene on movement, grab the bag, follow our character up, pull up to Murray, slight rack focus, we pull back round, she opens the door, we cut to our second shot in a second, there we go, a little push in, and then we cut back to the first shot. Now here's where the transition happens, right? Notice how there's a slight movement of the camera going from right to left, as well as the movement the actor plays of shutting the door. Slight movement, bang. And then as soon as that door closes, the next door opens in the next shot. I'm gonna slowly break this down why these transitions work so well. Okay, so here we go. So the door shuts, here we go, close, 1, 2, and on the second frame there, we've now cut to this next shot. We're changing the storyline to a different set of characters. As soon as it opens, we whip pan to the left, and then we whip pan back, and then doors close again. I think that was a really cool and interesting transition again. The reason why this works, again, is the same reasons we've been talking about before. It's because the subject matter is the same. It's one door, and the next shot is another door. and also the movement is the same. But that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of a breakdown. Be sure to like, subscribe if you enjoyed this, and also we're going to be doing a breakdown of episode 3 coming out soon. Take care, and I'll see you guys soon.